Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Caroline Pattinson. Caroline is the Managing Director of Keith Pattinson Estate Agents and Auctions, largest independent estate agent in the Northeast. Caroline, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. So, how did you get into estate agency? What's your story?
Well, it's a family business, so I've been an estate agent my whole life. My first memory of estate agency is, well, it goes back to when I was a little kid. So we used to go into the office, and people who've worked in the estate agency will remember this. You used to have to stick the photographs onto the property details, and that was my job. So the business was established in 1977, so it's been around a little bit longer than me, and that's what I used to do, sort of like weekends, holidays, after school. I used to go and used to take the particulars out the filing cabinet, used to stick the stickers on, and then from there, I've progressed on to photocopying, and then now I'm managing director.
Wow. So I'm sure there's been loads of lessons along the way. I won't ask you the lessons about sticking photos. I think technology has slightly moved on since then. So first of all, what is it like working in a family business and, and then getting the respect of all your colleagues and getting to the position that you've got to?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bonuses to being in a family business, but there's a lot of difficulties as well. And I think that the advantage is that everyone's invested in it. And as I say, it's sort of something which I've grown up about. And in that respect as well, we're very lucky. We're independent, so we can do anything that we want. We don't have to answer to outside shareholders. We don't have to answer to outside financial interests. Anything that we want to do, we've got the flexibility and the ability to do that. And a lot of the staff who work for us like working for a family business. And even as we've grown, we still are a family business. Every summer we have a staff party, and we have two parts of it. So the first part is people can bring their children, and then at a certain time the children have to go home and we have an adults party. And it's great. Max, my favourite part is the kids party. But these are people who, I've known when this person's gone on maternity leave, and then they come back in 1 year, they've got a baby, and some of those kids are now working for us. So it sort of goes full circle. And so from that respect, it's good working for a family business. It is. I think the downside is there's no shut off. So if you go for Sunday lunch on a Sunday, it's still talking about the business. If you go on holiday, it's still there. And so I think that's sort of sometimes where it's a bit of a disadvantage in terms of that. There's no divide between work sometimes and family. But overall, it works pretty well.
Good. So how do you manage to switch off then?
There's a few things. One thing that I did years ago, which it blows people's mind, is that I don't get my work emails through on my phone. I've only got one phone because having two phones, a work phone and a private phone, would just be a nightmare. So anyone will always ring me and I'll always answer, no matter where I am, on holiday, whatever, I'll pick up the phone. But in terms of emails, I think the worst thing you can do is have your emails automatically coming up on your phone. If, you've got to sort of switch off. And I learned that lesson about 13, 14 years ago, when everyone had Blackberries. And that was when you first started to get your emails through. And I was at a ball on a Saturday night, and I'd looked at my phone just to check the time. And I'd sort of seen emails from work, and your natural thing is you open it. And it was an email, someone complaining it was an issue, but it was nothing that needed to be dealt with on a Saturday night. It wasn't anything that needed to be dealt with on a Sunday night. The customer wasn't expecting a response until the Monday. But because I'd read it on a Saturday night, it ruined my weekend. So from that point on, I can check my emails on my phone, but they don't automatically appear. So I check them when I want to check them, as opposed to them being presented and then me feeling, going into them. And that definitely helps to sort of to switch off.
That is a great tip. I remember years ago I was on holiday with my kids, and there was a competition, and I think it was whoever got the highest percentage over turnover, their office would win a trip to Morocco. And it was the last day, and I was waiting for one exchange, and it was a big exchange, and I thought, yeah, if this happens, the whole office going to Morocco. And I was really, really excited because the figures were exceptional.
Yeah.
And every second I was looking at it. And then at 6:30, if the email finally came through to say we exchanged, and I was really excited, but it ruined the whole day for my family.
Yeah.
And then about half an hour later, I get a call from my MD at the time, and he said, "Stephen, wow, you have the most incredible, phenomenal month. Well done." I said, "Yeah, I'm so excited and going to Morocco." And he goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "What do you mean I'm not going to Morocco? We've just done." So he said, "You got beaten by one of the offices. They had an exchange a bit later where they needed to get something to a solicitor in Reading. They picked it up from a client, they drove it to Reading, and they exchanged this afternoon. You lost, and it was literally by £2,000." And I was like gutted, and yeah, to say it ruined my holiday. So yeah, emails, technology, and that was a BlackBerry at the time. So definitely get away from that. So rising through the ranks to MD, what are the lessons you've learned along the way?
I think that, to go back to one of your questions about working in a family business, it is a lot harder because you have to prove yourself. You constantly have to prove yourself because people have an expectation that you're there just because that's your name, that's it. And so you have to work twice as hard, and also you get half the credit. So from that perspective, I've done pretty much every job within the business, which definitely helps me as managing director. So from being a negotiator, managing the office, I've managed our call centre, I've worked in virtually every office that we've got on the high street. I worked in an auction team, sort of going around recruiting partner agents. I've done credit control, and that actually was one of my favourite jobs. I used to go to court and I was undefeated in terms of getting people who hadn't paid their sales fees. I had some quite good tactics when people came in, and I used to invite them in if they hadn't paid the fees. And I'd sit them, explain to them that, we'd take them to court, we would win. And, they'd end up paying us double because they'd owe us interest as well. And they always paid. I was nice about it, so they always paid. And I think from that, you've then learned different parts. And I've worked with a lot of different people within the business. But I've also done jobs sort of from outside of the business. But I think the key thing is making sure that you're working as a team. If you've got, no matter how good one individual person is, if they don't have the rest of the team there, then you won't be successful. So you could have the best valuer in the world who's listing properties, but if you haven't got some good negotiators in the office who are then selling the properties, it doesn't make a difference. The value can go out and promise the earth and sort of say we're fantastic, but if the service in the office doesn't match up, you can't win, can you? And vice versa, you can have negotiators sitting there who are the best salespeople, but if the value who's going out, and similar to football, the striker can't get the ball in the back of the net, there's no point. So I think it's much more about sort of having a team and having the right people as well. And sometimes quite a few people speaking about this recently, about having sometimes the wrong person in the business can really have a negative impact. So if you've got someone who's a really good performer but is really sort of toxic to everyone around them, then that's not good. It doesn't work. So short term, that person performs well, but it doesn't help the business as a whole.
Okay, I've seen that plenty of times. So recruitment, how do you get the right people in the right seats of the bus? How do you find these people?
Recruitment's probably one of the most difficult things, I think, because the only way you can become an estate agent is someone to give you a job as an estate agent. That's a fact. Obviously we've got people who go and they talk about sort of qualifications, but ultimately everyone who became an estate agent had someone who one day gave them a job. So we'll have to take chances on people. You don't always get it right. Sometimes you get it very right. Sometimes you get it very wrong. So for us, we try to do recruitment in a process where we invite people to come in and spend a bit of time, spend a couple of days with us, and that gives them a chance to sort of to see the job, and that gives us more of a chance to see them. Because in a 15-minute, half an hour interview, someone can promise you that they're the most motivated person on earth, that they're fantastic, that they're going to do this. But that's what they'll say in an interview. And then likewise, in an interview, I could tell everyone that, we're the best company in the world to work for. And it's fantastic. And every day you'll come in with a spring in your step and you'll walk home and you'll think you've had the best day ever. And some days you've missed your sales target and it's ruined your holiday. But in terms of that, so if we invite people in to spend a couple of days with us, then that gives them a chance to see us and it gives us a chance to see them and gives them a truer idea of what the role actually is. because a lot of people think it's like location, location, location. A lot of people think it's homes under the hammer. And it is partly like that, but there's a lot of hard work which goes into getting viewings. There's a lot of times where, you know, you are just making phone calls and you are just chasing leads. And that's not for everybody. And I think particularly now with the younger generation who aren't as used to speaking to people on the phone, it's really important for them to be able to do that.
So I agree, and I think the market obviously is very different to how it has been, especially through COVID, which respectfully every estate agent worked really, really hard, but the phones were ringing and you had the property and 30 people saw it and 30 offers and it was great. Whereas now, I don't know where you are, the market is more challenging. Maybe you're taking properties on and you're not getting the amount of viewings you once were, or any viewings. And you have to pick up the phone and you have to have the conversations. So what training do you deliver or give to your team to help them with these?
But that's the interesting thing. In the Northeast, we're 45% up on sales compared to last year.
Okay, interesting.
So for us, it's still very much on the val generation. We the thing that's holding us back is listings. But you're right, because there's a lot of people who are in a estate agency currently who, if you weren't an estate agent pre-COVID, you don't really know how to be an estate agent, because the phone rings, you answer it, you're booking the viewings, you've got too many people, you don't even need to ring for feedback because people are ringing you with offers before it's even sort of been on the market for 48 hours. But for us, we're doing more training that's internally, sort of some external training as well. We're also doing mystery shopping, which is a really valuable exercise, and that's external mystery shopping. And it's quite interesting because it picks up in terms of the areas where people are maybe missing those opportunities. And in some instances, it's a training need, and in some instances, it's just people just cutting corners. And that's a different approach to different people, isn't it? But quite interesting, the people who've done the job, the newest people sometimes perform better than the older people.
Yeah, I've got something called the Ed theory. So there was a guy called Ed who started, and in his first week, he managed to sell properties that have been on the market for 6 months, 8 months, because people literally, do you know what? Everybody's coming, they didn't like it. But Ed comes in with that fresh approach.
Yeah.
It's my first day, sees it through totally different eyes. And actually, if we can go back and remember our first day and treat every day as our first day, I'm sure we would sell loads more properties. Anyway, that's my Ed theory anyway. So whether it works or not is another thing. Mystery shopping's really interesting. I've done a lot of that recently. And actually, I find it very, very scary from what I've seen and what I've heard from agents. And I think one of the things that I've learned is I don't think our customers actually understand what estate agents do. Because some of the things that the estate agents actually said to me is pretty scary and actually quite embarrassing. But the consumer, I don't think, would know some of the things that estate agents do say. So what are you doing to educate your consumer in your area about, good practice rather than bad practice? I loved your stat there about, sales are up 45%. That to me is educating people, buyers that are saying, well, maybe hold on, interest rates are going up, cost of living is going up, but hold on a second, your sales are 45% up. So to me, that's an important education piece to let your market know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's it. So we do sort of try to shout about that in various different ways. So we have like a customer newsletter which goes out every month, and fortunately, touch wood, it's been very positive for the last, pretty much consistently, apart from when we had the interest rate rises at the back end of 2022, which really did, and the start of 2023 last year still had sort of a bit of a legacy impact on it. But yeah, it's much more about educating the consumer, and I think that's where, which don't get me started on my little rant about the press, because I think that bad news sells. So it's always about the negative. We had a fuel crisis when petrol stations were running out of fuel and it hit £2 a litre. But now you don't get that reported, that it's now down to whatever price. And I think it's it's very much, that's where it is sort of a estate agent's job as well, to educate the consumer. Unfortunately, people sometimes close their ears to things as well. Like anyone who's been an estate agent for 20 years will remember how long it took us to convince people after 2007 and 2008 that the house wasn't worth what they thought it was worth. It took a long time for people to really get to grips with the fact that actually the values had readjusted. Interestingly, everyone's always happy when, you know, they'll tell you that the house has gone up in value. No one will ever accept that it's come down in value. And I do sort of think estate agents, we are property experts. We do know what's going on. If you look at land registry figures, that reflects what's completed. That's not what was sold. And now with sort of the timescales for conveyancing, it's not telling you what actually is happening in the market today. If you report land registry figures, that's what happened in sort of September, October last year. And markets can change quite quickly, as we saw with after the mini budget. It can change very quickly in a short space of time, and then take a little while for those changes to sort of to come through. So for us, it's about sort of what we put out on social media. It's about our direct communications with customers. It's about what sort of like the branch are when we're talking to people, is explaining about this. And I think that's where, you know, estate agents do have a valuable role in educating the market.
No, I couldn't agree more. So I think I read you got 27 branches.
Yeah.
So how do you? Hello, and you're welcome to join in as well. So how do you keep everybody motivated then, and how have you built that culture with the amount of people you got working with you?
It's everyone's motivated by different things, and that's what you learn as a manager. And you know, whether that's you're managing a team of 3 people or you're managing a team of 300. Some people it's about praise and appreciation. Some people it's financial. Some people need that target and that push. Other people it's about sort of putting an arm around them, saying, look, you know, you can do this. So every month we run a different incentive, and we change it up every month. So it's always on a different business area, and it's always a different motivator. So sometimes it's a team prize. So sometimes it's a team night out. There's a team incentive for them to do, so they work together. Sometimes it's an individual. And it's quite interesting because depending on the incentive, people will respond differently. So there's some who, no matter what the prize is, if you're a salesperson, you just want to get the prize. Like it could be, you know, 50p, but you just want to get that because you want to hit that target to get that 50p. And I think that's where it's difficult, but it's quite interesting. And some of them, like my favorite overall incentive is we do what's called the sleigh. And it started off at Christmas, but we do a summer sleigh as well. And there's certain things that people need to achieve. So whether that's a sale or a rental, whether that's sort of conveyancing referrals or financial services, whatever it might be. And they get to pick a prize, and I've literally filled my boot, and it's got, I mean, the Tesco's think I've got a serious drink problem because it's full of red wine, white wine, rosé, prosecco. We've got spirits, we've got champagne. I mean, you could have a whole cocktail party, but there's also non-alcoholic ones. So in the Christmas, it's more kind of chocolates and things like that, and candles. In the summer, believe it or not, my most popular item is the beach towels. And it's great because people, and they know that they have to sort of, if they achieve some of these things, then I go around the offices and genuinely, like, you know, they have a little shopping list and they come out and they get to pick the prizes. And it's amazing that like people are more motivated sometimes to get a beach towel than the fact that they're getting commission and this is part of their job. But that's sort of salespeople. And I think that's one of my favorite ones because as well, you go out and then we send, and again, sometimes it's about reinforcement. So you then send photographs around the company of people with the prizes. So everyone's sort of sitting and thinking, well, I want that, or I want to be involved. But it's not for everybody because some people hate having the photograph taken. And then some of it's just like they just want about a financial reward or the recognition. So it's always a bit different.
Okay, I love that. There's going to be people watching this maybe growing their own team, maybe just starting. How do you find out, actually, you know, as you've rightly pointed out, people have got different motivations there. So how do you find out what motivates individuals?
I think it's by knowing your team. And I think that if, you know, on day one, you don't know how someone's motivated, but if you've worked with someone for even sometimes a relatively short period of time, but over time you learn how they're motivated. And I think that is the key. You need to know your team. And I think that, or if you can't know them personally, then managers need to know them, and then they need to be able to motivate them themselves, or tell you how they think that their team would be motivated. And that's it as well, as giving people autonomy within that. So giving managers autonomy to try to incentivize their team, try to sort of to motivate them, because it's great for me to do a competition across the whole company. But actually, when I was a branch manager, if it was a hot day, really hot day, we used to have an incentive for ice creams. So it's like, get evaluation by 12 o'clock and I'll go and buy you an ice cream. And if it was a cold day, it was, well, we'll get hot chocolates, we'll go to Costa or Starbucks and we'll get hot chocolates, or, a latte or something like that. But you have to get hit the target. And sort of those small things, like, and again, I shouldn't, as a managing director, have to send to a manager to say, look, you need to sort of like offer a small incentive to your team. But if you know your team, you know what they want. Sometimes it's the want to finish 15 minutes early, half an hour. For some people, it's time back. It's really important to be able to spend with their families. And so, yes, we have centralized incentives, but it's really important for people who've then more directly managed a team. The bigger your team, the more you need to obviously have managers who can then do that.
Brilliant, thank you. So next week, I know you and your colleagues are coming up to the Women in the State Agency conference, which I'm really looking forward to and was exceptional last year. What are you looking forward to when you come up for? What are you expecting?
I think I didn't go last year, but I heard really, really positive feedback from it. And I think what's really interesting is the fact that it is women in a state agency. And very, very often I know I'm a minority in terms of within my role in the industry. So quite often I'll go to events or meetings and I am, there's 10 men for every one of me. And so I think it's really important that there is an event for women where women feel more comfortable. I think too often at property events, women, they are outnumbered. So some choose not to go. Some choose not to go to some of the conferences and events, which is really a shame. And it's sad because then they're not engaging, and that then perpetuates the problem. So I think having a women-only event where women are much more encouraged to go and to interact as well and build a stronger network, I think will help, because we're quite unusual. We've got more female directors within the business. One of the most interesting questions people ask me when they find out it's a family business is if I have a brother. And when they find out I've got a brother, their second question is, why isn't he managing director? He works in a different industry. But that's everyone's perception. That is genuinely quite often the second question I get asked. And that is the overriding feeling. And there's a lot within our business. We've got more female managers than managers. We've got a transparent pay scale. So in terms of that, it's a case of, which in some industries it's not. In some estate agents, I know for a fact that men have been paid more than the women. And that's quite often because they they made more of a fuss. They were more likely to push themselves forward, and then they got paid higher rather than it was on ability. Whereas for us, it's just on ability. And we're quite flexible as a company in terms of we have a lot of people who work part-time. Some of them are men, a lot more of them are women. But I don't really call them part-time. I just call it reduced hours, because part-time says that they're only half in. But actually our top performing members of staff work reduced hours, and our top negotiator in the company for 3 years running worked reduced hours. She finished at 2:45 every day to pick her son up from school, but she was a machine when she was at work. When she was in work in the office, she just got on with it. And that's not even pro-rata that she was top performer. She was that. So for us, we're quite open to flexible working in terms of if it can work within the hours of the business. And I think that really does help. And I think that's where having women-only events and having more women in more senior positions within the industry will help the industry. I think that, there's definitely where it comes to networking, women need to network more.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to meeting you next week. I'm sure it's going to be another fantastic event. Last year was absolutely incredible, and as I said off there, was one of the best events I think I've ever been to. It was very emotional. So if you're watching this and you're going, bring loads of tissues. I'm sure this year will be exactly the same and no different. So one final question, or maybe two actually. Who inspires Caroline?
Who inspires me? Well, that's a good question. I think it's like, it'd be a bit corny, but I would sort of say Keith. Keith Pattinson, who's my dad. Like, in terms of it, the business that he sort of built up is really impressive. And one of the things that he's always never been afraid to give things a go. So he's always sort of been on board with, like, try it. If it doesn't work, what's the worst that can happen? And yeah, so even today, you know, he's in the office, he's 75, but he's still as passionate about the business today as he was when he started it nearly 50 years ago. And I think that's great. And I think that's where estate agency and property can be two different things. It can be a job or it can be a career. And for people who it's a job, you know, go and do something else, because you can probably get paid a lot more money doing something. If you sort of see it as a career, it's because you love it. You know, I love estate agency. I love selling houses. I don't obviously sell houses every day, but I still do answer the phone. I do sort of like work in a call center sometimes on a Saturday, or I'll pick up the phone in a branch. And I love booking in viewings. I love speaking to customers. And I think that's where you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to be passionate about the business, because there's ups and downs. You know, we have, as you say, sort of the perception of what estate agents do. And I think customer expectations have gone up and up and up over the years. So it can be a tough job, but it's a really rewarding one. And again, managing people, you know, sometimes it's great, but sometimes no one wants to be dealing with the problems, but that's part of the job. But I think if you love the role overall, it's a great job to be doing.
100%. I'm really grateful for your time. If people want to get hold of you, Caroline, how do they do that, please?
Yeah. Well, they can get me on LinkedIn, or my email's just caroline.pattinson@pattinson.co.uk, or they can see me next Wednesday if they're coming along.
Brilliant. Well, look, everybody, thank you very much for listening and watching. Please like it, share it, get the message out there, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks very much, Caroline. Thanks for being a great guest.